All right, good evening, everybody, and welcome to tonight's meeting. It is 6 o'clock, so we're going to go ahead and get started. September 12th, 2018, and we're here this evening for the first public hearing of the fiscal year 2019 annual budget. Appreciate everybody coming out this evening. Start out this evening with a prayer and followed by the pledge. I'm going to ask that our sheriff lead us in the pledge tonight, and I'll ask that our new county assistant administrator lead us in a prayer. Thank you, gentlemen. All right, tonight the 2019 budget overview. Turn it over now to the county administrator.
Got a couple slides coming up, but everybody on the dais here has your read ahead. I'll go ahead and get started while we bring those up. I wanted to recap some of the tentative points from our July workshop. The current millage rate is maintained in this budget, 6.0953. Funding for capital is coming out of the capital fund and out of the local option sales tax. Salary adjustments and merit increases. The salary adjustments we talked about to the civil service pay scale are included, as well as the step increase, merit increase for all county employees. In the sheriff's budget, we were able to come to balance with that, an increase of about $5 million, which included a 10% pay raise for his sworn law enforcement officers this year. The next slide is major changes since that July workshop, and one of the major changes is sort of just an accounting thing, and something that I wanted to institute in this budget to increase transparency and make it more evident what our county budget is annually, is an increase from what we talked about in July of $13 million. That is because we're including in this budget those projects we know that we're going to continue to fund and build that we authorized in the budget we're doing now. For instance, the geothermal project at the jail is one that we've only expended very little money of the $2.5 million. We're going to move that into this year's budget. The landfill expansion, which is a $10 million project. So those are reflected in that bottom line change. We also added just recently in the board action about $500,000 for the improvements in the Navarre Beach Marine Park, the NERDA project, and you all agreed to make up some of the difference there. And then one difference is the way we accounted for the courthouse money. We're committing that $5 million for that. The next slide, other changes since the July workshop, just some things to keep you apprised of. The medical examiner discussion continues. We had a long conference call this morning with all the counties, administrators, and county attorneys. We're getting close, I think, to at least offering a contract and an arrangement. What I have done is added some money to the budget based upon the increased caseload that the medical examiner's office is seeing. So that's a minor adjustment, but we expect to be able to fund the contract if the medical examiner accepts what was discussed this morning. When we talked last, I had not settled on if we would be able to include a deferred compensation matching program. There is money included in the budget. We're still working with our deferred compensation provider as well as our fiduciary agent to figure out how we do that. They're going to provide us some guidance, but we have planned money in the budget to do some form of a matching program to that program. And then the beach safety, water safety lifeguard program, we've carried that in our Navarre Beach other line and funded that annually. We've been in talks for several years now with Navarre Beach Fire Rescue, who has expressed interest in taking on the water safety program. They handle water safety calls after hours when the lifeguards are not manned. They wanted to take the whole thing. Their latest proposal is reasonable, it's fundable, and I'm going to recommend in this budget, it doesn't really change the budget at all, but we'll be bringing an agreement to you next month to basically transfer the water safety program to Navarre Beach Fire Rescue next year. We'll finish out this season, but then they'll take it on from there, and they'll do the hiring of lifeguards and maintain the beach safety for us for next year. So no real budgetary impact, but just a different way of doing business that we'll adopt over the next year. The next slide, we highlighted one more. Just spelled out those increases over last year's budget. This was one of the questions that came up in one of the workshops. What is different from 2018 to 2019? And that's the breakdown of how we went from 145.7 million to 175.3 million. You can see some of that, 16.5 million is those prior year projects, things that are already authorized but just are not yet complete, that we're carrying that money and showing that and reflecting it in the budget. The next slide gives you just a different breakdown of kind of how the money is spent, and this is all included in the budget document, just presenting it in a different way here, where the money goes essentially, percentage-wise. We have another version of that on the next slide. By fund, the general fund being the largest of the funds at $94.2 million. And then a breakdown of all the other government funds, fine and forfeiture, our enterprise funds, the sales tax. That's just another picture of how the money will be expended. Next slide just is a recap of the millage rate history since 2000. And we've maintained 6.0953 for the now 11th year, 12th year actually, for 2019. Next slide. And I think Commissioner Salter mentioned this in our meeting the other day, where we are almost back to that 2007 level. We're within about $500,000 of that ad valorem collection rate or amount that we had in 2007. The next slide is one that we've used annually to just kind of depict that we are a rapidly growing county. Our population is outpacing our ad valorem collections, and that delta seems to increase every year. Next slide. And that's the high-level overview of our fiscal year 2019 budget. The budget in brief, as well as the budget in detail. All of the spreadsheets are provided on our website and are available for the public to download if they want to dig into the line items and get all the details. It's available for them there. I would answer any questions the board may have, or any of the public that's here that had a question about our annual budget or the process.
Mr. Salter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm glad Dan talked about the horizontal ad valorem collection history, because it's important for people to understand that back in 2007, we were bringing in approximately $58.6 million from the ad valorem tax. And then at the bottom of the Depression in 2013, that had dropped down to $44 million. So we had lost $13 million over that span. And we just couldn't do a lot of things. We had to make some tough personnel decisions. We had to put a lot of projects on hold. And that's one of the main reasons, because we lost $13 million. And this year, we're finally back up almost to where we were back in 2007. So I just want everybody to understand, sometimes we get asked, why didn't y'all do this? Why didn't you do that? It's hard to do with what you don't have to do. So thank goodness for the half-cent sales tax. Thank goodness that the economy has recovered. Thank you.
Any other board members, comments, questions? All right. Dan, I think you did the staff, along with staff, Jane, everybody else did an outstanding job on this. Thank you. makes it very clear, and hope any citizens that have any questions will focus on this. This entire briefing this evening will be available or is available on our website. So if you see something there you have a question about, I call Jane.
That's what I do, sir. We wouldn't have been able to. I wouldn't have been able to present this information to you without Jane and her department, and Henry, who was here last night, putting all the details in, as well as all the department heads and directors who went through their budgets, all the constitutional officers, and there's a lot of work that goes into, you know, what we just covered in 5 minutes. It's a months-long, year-long process. We'll start again shortly.
Yeah, getting ready for. Well, and since you mentioned that, I wasn't going to, but do you have any scenario in mind for, I feel like everybody else does, that this amendment for the additional ad valorem deduction is going to pass? Do you have somewhat of a loose game plan for that at this time, or?
There are a couple of options that Jane and I have talked about. There are some, there are funds available that are currently committed by board action that could be released to help make some of that delta. There are unallocated reserves in the general fund. We took the step this year to reserve $20 million in the general fund for hurricane response and disaster response primarily, but also for other reasons. There are other unallocated funds in there that could be used as a stability fund to kind of help offset some of that. I wouldn't offset all of it. It's about $4 million that if the property tax exemption is passed, that will affect our bottom line negatively in 2020.
And hopefully growth will help pick up some of that too. So, all right. Any other comments, questions? All right. At this time, we'll move on. We've had a board discussion and public comments. So at this time, it's tentative millage rate adoption. I'll read this into record. The fiscal year 2018-2019 operating millage rate countywide is 6.0953, which is 5.07% above the rollback rate of 5.8012 mills. Any comments or questions on that? If not, I'll move that without objection. Hearing none, so passed. Tentative operating budget adoption. Adoption of the fiscal year 2019 tentative operating budget of $175,298,694 is what everything comes up to. Any comments, questions on that? Corrections? Hearing none, I'll move that without objection. Hearing none, it passes. Upcoming meetings, the final budget hearing is scheduled for September 18th, 2018 at 6 p.m. in the boardroom located at 6495 Caroline Street in Milton. We'll see all y'all folks here again at that time. This time I'll open it to public forum. Anybody who has a comment from the public would like to come speak to the board prior to adjournment? Seeing none, we are adjourned.